For a while, I was a cop, a policeman in Germany, actually,
Wow.
which after that really put me in the right spiritual direction of consciousness and.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am with Andy. Andy is a musician and is a father in Koh Phangan. Also, I'll say is a gentleman very much present in the community because I see you everywhere I go. I seem to see you. Yes, so Andy can be found in Cookies Cafe, that's where I met you first, at the Juice Shack in Srithanu.
That's it.
And any kind of events pretty much, you know, you always like pop up in a way or another, so you're very much part of the Srithanu community, I'll say.
Very much so, yeah. Beautiful community. The beautiful thing was when we arrived 5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago from Byron Bay. The first time we came 7 years ago because our daughter was already living here, Mani Crystal.
Yeah.
Known to many friends here, I suppose too. And when we came the very first time, the transition was very easy because the general vibration and the general action here, also in spiritual terms on the island, is very much reflected on the good old Byron Bay in Australia where we came from, you know. So it was in the vibrational field, it was a very, very easy transition. It felt immediately home because it felt like being home back in Australia, you know.
Sounds lovely. There are indeed these kind of sister places around the world where our kind of people, so to speak, come and hang out, and Koh Phangan is certainly one of those now. I've never been to Byron's Bay particularly, but I've heard it's a beautiful place. But tell us a little bit more about your background. I mean,
Okay, background, basically born near Hamburg, North Germany. Then for a while I was a cop, a policeman in Germany actually,
wow.
which after that really put me in the right spiritual direction of consciousness and what I'm really standing for. What happened then, this is in my very early 20s. At the time, so this is more than 40 years ago, at the time basically the demonstration and the civil war against atomic reactors in Germany, or actually Europe-wide, you know, France, Italy too, I believe. So 40 years ago, the big fight against atomic reactors in Germany started, and at the time I was still part of the German police force. At that very moment, for the first time, we got a helmet, a shield, and a couple of sticks to bash them down. I just got to throw in here, the reason I went to join the police force was that I was going to stay there for 4 years, do the 1-year police academy, and then actually go into 3 years of an education, of a training as a diving master. Then after 4 years, legally, I could have left the police force. Before I lived hobby on Crete in Greece, so the general idea was to go back to Greece, open a diving school afterwards, employ some diving masters, and have beautiful relationship with sunburned English tourists. Great vision in your early 20s. Unfortunately, the atomic reactors came in, and then I realized that I'm morally, spiritually, psychically standing on the wrong side. I just when they started training against how to smash down demonstrators at atomic reactor demonstrations, I basically gave back my badge and my gun, had to still wait 3 weeks before I could actually leave the academy. And I still remember the head of our force saying to me, "Hey, Mr. Holm, what do you think where you're going now?" And I said, "Well, it looks like you're going to find me on the right side of the fence of the atomic reactor." And so it ended up, you know, we are fighting against atomic reactors in Germany. And in a way, of course, I was the guy because I went through the training against demonstration at atomic reactors, so I knew all the code words, like, you know, action red, action green, and what it all means when they push it through their loudspeakers so the cops know where to run, what to do, how violent to be or not, and what to protect. So I basically know the whole system, how it's going to work when they attack us. So that was a wonderful thing because we could direct our groups in the right position.
And
So,
indeed, like I think, well, certainly Italy banned nuclear reactors.
Germany is now completely fading out. Okay, they're completely fading out now. So we're going, I mean, we're going everywhere into alternative energy, solar, and you name it. Whereabouts the worldwide geoengineering of our skies will have a huge impact. In California, they reckon they lose at least already 30% of sun energy through constant geoengineering. So we will have to adjust, but there are so many other natural, if you look at Tesla, and there's so many free energy sources we could use, which of course are suppressed because there's no money in there for the boys running the show up there. So, there are a lot of other alternatives which are absolutely clean, which are absolutely free, and which could give us all the energy we need. But of course, it's against the law, it's forbidden, and it's outlawed because there's no money in there.
I think when I try to explain to my friends back home the kind of people that hang out in Koh Phangan, I think that our community is very diverse, but certainly there are people that have a view of the world which is a little bit out of the mainstream. So they tend to look at big subjects or conversations and tend to have a spin on them which is a little bit different, right? So one of the big things that people talk about globally, particularly now, is the conspiracies, right? And there are conspiracies theories, and also there are conspiracies that are proven. And there's many conspiracies that have been proven in the past. For instance, Edward Bernays, campaigns to convince women to take up smoking, for instance, or convince Americans to have bacon for breakfast, or even, I think America did some action in Guatemala against the government because of United Fruits. So there is certainly in the past been some conspiracies.
Absolutely.
I know that you like to look into these sort of conspiracies as well. How do you you balance your views, and where do you get your sources from, and how do you express them to people?
To give you a little example, in 2003, myself and two other filmmakers from Byron Bay, one of us went over to the United States, so this is about maybe some 18, 19 months after 9/11. The 9/11 Truth Movement was already running in the United States. We had by then already, as an example, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, which are the non-government paid scientists and architects who come actually with the real truth of how the three towers actually came down. Of course, the steel never melted and they never fall in free fall due to melting steel. That's today scientifically completely beyond the question, right? Those towers never melted. Those towers were brought down by controlled demolition, beyond discussion. So you have, these were a group of 1,500 architects and engineers internationally from everywhere in the world. They said, hey, come on guys, this is sport science, what you do in there. Well, so the big thing when you look at what's really happening in the world is, if a scientist comes and tell you 1 and 1 is 2, another scientist comes and says, hey, this is wrong, look at it, 1 and 1 is 11. What do? The very first thing you do is you check out which party is financing the science, and that gives you already the lead in which direction we're going in terms of truth. Okay, there is paid science and there's truth science. Okay, let's just look worldwide at vaccination, the science of vaccination. It's freaking paid science by the pharma industry and by the governments, with the pharma now, of course, mainly worldwide. And I think we are still very, very lucky in Thailand here, right? Thailand has not yet been taken over by the pharma. Because you just look at the vaccination schedule for kids in Thailand compared to the Western world, and you can see Gates and consortium and pharma has not taken over Thailand yet. Otherwise, the kids vaccination would be extended to the level of Western countries, because the boys are going to miss out on billions and billions of dollars. And billions of dollars in the aftercare of people who were damaged by vaccination, and they do not miss out and stuff like that. So it really shows we're still in a pretty good position at the moment in Thailand in terms of pharma takeover. But back to how to differ between truth and non-truth, as I said, the very first thing is You look at science, look at who financed the science, and it will open your eyes and gives you all your answers already. And then, of course, you have the independent science by scientists who actually still work with scientific consciousness. Scientists who actually, at times, really mess up their whole professional future by standing up and saying, guys, this is not science, this is paid science, this is the real science. And those people really do come, whether it's in the field of vaccination, whether it's in the field of 9/11, they're truth seekers, and science is based on truth. So therefore they're standing up for their personal right and their personal belief to say, guys, this is not science. This is science once you're not paid for, you know. So there's a certain honor to their profession inbuilt too, which I really appreciate, you know, because without those people, we'd be long gone, you know, we'd be long gone.
It's a very interesting subject, a very difficult subject to discuss as well, right? Because indeed, I think that society should be as inclusive as possible of different people's views and opinions. And I think it's very healthy for a democratic society to have a debate about anything pretty much. So, you know, it's good to have people that, you know, look at things and look at them from a different perspectives. And then every individual person can make up their own mind, you know, and that's good, isn't it?
The major thing is also really how much are you willing. Number one, it's a question of being willing. How much are you willing and conscious of to actually investigate what's really happening? How much of your information is based on media information? So, as an example, talking about media, manipulated media information, if you look at the United States, I think last year the figure was that about 84% of media outlets are run by 5 big companies, okay? 5 big media companies are running over 80% of the media. What's left for us in truth, in consciousness, okay?
Yeah, it's indeed it's very interesting subject, you know, also the media, etc. We live in a very confusing time, particularly now, I see, and what I done myself about 5 years ago, I stopped watching the news, you know, and I kind of swapped the time I was spending on the news with time like reading books instead, you know. I like literature very much, and then you know, it's I think seeking the truth is something that is innate in human beings, you know, and how you decide to do that, you know, it could be in the external world, it can also be in a sort of the inner, it's an inner journey too, you know.
It is a big inner journey. It's a big inner journey. And if you look for the truth and you bring the truth out there, you don't really do that to make friends. You know?
That's also to be considered, you know, because indeed these are minority views or sometimes even fringe views. And you know, I think Koh Phangan is a good place. It's a good place for, like, you know, for having these kind of conversations. But certainly the world back there, back home, you know, doesn't really perceive this conversation even to be appropriate. You know, sometimes.
I think, you know, one of the major things is really talking in terms of exploring what's really happening in the world, what's really happening past the sheep farm media and you name it. The major thing is, as I just said this morning to you, for me at least, and I think it's a really good thing to look at, is if you do understand the system as much as you can, as much as there is non-media and truthful information available, if you try to understand the system and you do understand the system, then you can find your own place within the system. Once you understand it, you found your own place within the system.
Yeah.
It's now possible that the system is not running you, but you running within the system your own life. But you do have to understand the system to find your own position within the system. And then the system won't run you, you run within the system. And that's I think that's a very, very healthy way for mental, spiritual, and psychic survival, you know, very important.
I totally agree.
If you can't gather the truth, you are living in an illusion. It's that simple. And then you got to look who is running your illusion and for which reason, which purposes, and what's the game.
Andy, so it's interesting indeed, to have somebody like you bringing up, the very important subject of truth, ultimate truth, and also, trying to look at the system the way it is, and maybe having a little bit of more of a minority view on it. But ultimately, we all want to have a good life, indeed, as you said. So finding your space within the system rather than being against it completely, it's possibly a better strategy for a happy life. I know that also one of the things that you love to do is music, right?
Yeah.
So I know, like in Freeway, you were, doing concerts regularly. Now it's a bit on hold, obviously, because of the, the emergency. What kind of music do you like?
I used to start when I was 12, 13 years old. I used to start as a drummer. Because, I thought if I play the drums, everyone got to listen. The noisiest instrument, right?
Yeah.
So I started as a drummer in a band in Germany, and we played Creedence Clearwater Revival covers, Tina Turner covers, and you name it. And then one day, and I was probably maybe 15 or something, 16, a friend of mine said, hey, you got to come to Hamburg. This band, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer is playing, you got to see him. And Keith Emerson at the time was the first guy. I mean, this is synthesizers before the microchip, okay? So what I've got today, like on one little microchip and one of I play with 3 synthesizers live, right? Because I'm only one person. I got to swap sounds and you name it, play with both hands. But 25 plus years in Australia, I released another 17 albums in Australia.
Wow.
Which went really well because most of the albums were Australian themes.
Okay.
Plus I had a license in Sydney and in Byron Bay, played at the markets, in particular in Sydney. I had license to play in all the tourist spots, Bondi Beach, Darling Harbour, and all the CDs, which were New World ambient music, so also hitting into an audience that, wouldn't really buy boom, 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 techno music. Right?
Wow.
But the concept itself, of course, with the appropriate picture on it, Bondi Beach, Blue Mountain Tales, Australia. So it was like for tourists also not only that they love the music, but it's also a little momentum to take home from your holiday, So it was really amazing, so 1,000 and 1,000 of records in Sydney made a really nice lifestyle out of that. And still on the case, like 40 years later.
Andy, thank you very much for this little chat today. It's been very interesting having you here. And
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna see you around in Srithanu again very soon. So
might be inevitable. Sorry. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.